Welcome to Ash of Grim. Hello, dear Ash of Grim followers. Today I'm going to tell you 3 stories from the ghost town of Greyhollow. If you're ready, let's start with our first story. Daniel had always preferred night drives. The road was quieter then, and the darkness felt like a blanket that hid the day behind him. That evening had been especially exhausting. Endless meetings, a dead phone battery, and a mind buzzing with unfinished thoughts. Rain had started falling just as he left the city limits, thin at first, then heavier, turning the asphalt into a mirror of distorted lights. He told himself that once he reached home, everything would slow down. A warm shower, a silent house, sleep without dreams. He had driven this route dozens of times and knew it well enough to let his thoughts wander. The windshield wipers kept a monotonous rhythm on the glass when Daniel noticed the sign. The main road was closed due to construction, and a rusty arrow pointed him toward the forest. After a long and tiring day, he wanted to get home as soon as possible, so he turned the steering wheel without thinking much. As the asphalt narrowed, the trees leaned over the road, and the area illuminated by the headlights did not extend more than a few meters ahead. There was no phone signal, and the radio emitted only a dull static. When the fuel gauge began to drop dangerously low, an unease he could not define filled him, but it was too late to turn back. The fog descended suddenly. It was dense and heavy, as if the air itself was pressing down on the road. At that moment, an old sign appeared out of the mist. It read, Greyhollow. The letters were still readable beneath the peeling paint. Daniel thought he should feel relieved because a town meant fuel, food, and help. The forest opened abruptly, and a small settlement emerged. The buildings were neatly lined up, but there was a strange absence in the town. There were no lights. Not a single window leaked a yellow glow. The gas station light was on, and somehow this made him even more uneasy. When he stepped inside, he locked eyes with a very old man behind the counter. The man's face was deeply wrinkled, but what was truly disturbing were his eyes. They were looking, yet seemed to see nothing. When Daniel said he needed fuel, the old man slowly nodded and said the pumps were broken. He added that someone would come to fix them in the morning. His voice was calm, but that calm offered no comfort. Daniel objected, saying he was almost out of fuel, but the old man only repeated that he should stay at the motel. There was no other option. The motel stood at the very edge of town, closest to the forest. As Daniel approached the building, he felt as if there was movement among the trees, but when he looked, he saw only branches swaying in the wind. When he entered the room, the first thing he noticed was the cleanliness. It was too clean, as if it had never been used. The paintings hanging on the walls deepened his unease. They all showed the same road, a road stretching from the forest into the town, and a single man walking along it. In each painting, the man was closer to the town, and in the final one, his face was clear. When Daniel met his own gaze, his heart slammed hard against his chest. The night did not move forward. Every time he checked his watch, it read 03:17. Whispers began to seep from inside the walls. It was impossible to make out exactly what they were saying, but they all seemed to want the same thing: stay. When he entered the bathroom, he noticed the mirror had fogged up. When he wiped it with his finger, a single word appeared: do not leave. At that moment, a clicking sound came from behind the door, then another and another. It sounded as if it was not a single hand, but many fingers. When he looked out the window, he saw that the town had changed. There were no people in the streets, but there were shadows, long, thin shadows. They belonged to nothing, yet they moved. In that instant, everything made sense. There was no fuel because no one ever left. The pumps were not broken. The roads led into the town, but never out of it. Morning never came.
The repairman never arrived. Nothing the old man had said came true. Daniel decided to run. When he left the motel, the town was completely silent, but he felt he was not alone. He ran toward the forest, but every path eventually led back into the town. When his breath gave out, he suddenly found himself on the main road. The sun was rising. The road construction sign was gone. Greyhollow was gone. Everything looked normal. When he returned home, he told everyone what he had experienced, but no one believed him and said he made it up. He checked the maps. There was no such town. But at night, he began to see the same road in his dreams. In every dream, the town grew more crowded. In the final dream, he was at the gas station. The old man was looking at him and smiling. "The fuel is ready," he said. When Daniel woke up, his bedroom was filled with a heavy smell of gasoline. When he told his family about this, no one believed him. He said he saw the same dream every night, and one morning, no one could find him. He had vanished silently. The police launched a large-scale search, but found no trace, as if he had disappeared in an instant, and no news of Daniel was ever heard again.
You've heard our first story, Daniel's story. Next up is Ethan Miller's story. Enjoy listening. The sky was already darkening when Ethan Miller realized how quiet the road had become. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses against the ears and makes a person aware of their own breathing. He rolled his shoulders to shake off the stiffness and kept driving, telling himself that this was just another long stretch of empty highway. Still, the feeling that something was slightly off refused to leave him. As night was about to fall, Ethan Miller yawned behind the wheel and glanced at the map once more. He did not really need to, because the navigation app on his phone had been showing the same route for hours. Still, he could not stop himself from looking, driven by a gnawing unease. The long journey from New Mexico to Colorado had been more exhausting than he expected. As the sun set, the sky turned the color of rust, and the asphalt stretched ahead like an endless line. Ethan had driven this road many times before, but this time everything felt different, as if the road was not taking him somewhere, but pulling him away from something. The radio suddenly went silent. Then the screen went dark. There was no signal. At first, Ethan did not worry because losing reception was common in this area. But a few minutes later, the familiar curves of the road began to disappear. The navigation froze. Road signs became fewer. Then they vanished entirely. Ethan slowed down and looked around. The desert gave way to dense trees. This was impossible. According to the map, there was no forest here. After a while, the road narrowed, and the asphalt turned into an old, cracked surface. Beyond the reach of the headlights lay a thick darkness. Ethan considered turning back, but when he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw that the road behind him had vanished into blackness as well, as if it had closed behind him. The fuel gauge was near half, but the anxiety inside him overpowered logic. His heart was racing. Then the fog descended, first like a thin veil, then as a heavy, suffocating mass that swallowed the road. The headlights were weak against it. At that moment, an old sign emerged from the mist. Its wooden posts were rotting, and its paint was peeling. In faded letters, it read, "Greyhollow." Ethan hit the brakes and stopped the car. He did not know if he had ever heard that name before, but the word sent a chill through him. Still, the hope of a town outweighed his fear. Maybe he could get fuel or ask someone for directions. Silence greeted him as he entered the town. The streets were orderly but felt abandoned. There were houses, but no lights. The windows were dark. There was no sign of life anywhere. When he stepped out of the car, his footsteps echoed through the empty street.
The echo seemed to emphasize just how empty the town was. As he was about to turn back, he noticed a light in the distance. It was a gas station. Inside the station, he saw an old man sitting on a chair. He looked as if he had not moved for hours or even days. When Ethan entered, the man lifted his head. His eyes were strange, very deep and very empty. Ethan said he needed fuel. The man spoke slowly. He said the pumps were not working. He added that they would be fixed in the morning. Morning. The word sounded strange to Ethan, as if the concept of morning was foreign here. Ethan protested, but the man only pointed toward the motel. He said it was at the end of town. He added that Ethan should spend the night there. His voice was calm, but final. Ethan looked outside. The fog had swallowed the town completely. The road he came from was no longer visible. He had no choice but to agree.
The motel was old but well kept. When he entered the room, the first thing he noticed was the smell, old wood and dampness. But there was also a metallic scent, like blood. As he checked the room, the paintings on the walls caught his attention. They all showed the same road, a road stretching from the forest into the town, and in every painting, a person walking along it. In the first painting, the figure was far away. In the next one, closer. When Ethan approached the final painting, his throat tightened. The man's face was clear. It was his own. He stepped back. His heart pounded in his ears. His mind told him this was a coincidence, but another voice inside him whispered that this town had been waiting for him. Night settled in, but time did not move forward. He checked his phone. The clock was stuck at 03:17. Sounds began to come from the walls, whispers. At first they were unclear, then the words became distinct. Stay, stay here. When he entered the bathroom, he saw that the mirror had fogged up. The mist wiped itself away, and words appeared. Do not go back. Ethan punched the mirror. The glass cracked, but did not break. It felt elastic, like a surface that refused to shatter. Clicking sounds came from the door. Not one, but many. The door handle slowly moved downward. When Ethan turned around, he noticed the paintings had changed. There was no longer just the road. Now there were the streets of the town, and people in them, but they had no faces. Ethan decided to run. He burst out of the room. The corridor seemed endless. The more he ran, the longer it stretched. At last he made it outside. The town was no longer empty. There were silhouettes in the streets. They had human shapes, but their movements were wrong. Their joints bent where they should not. Their heads turned too slowly. All of them were watching Ethan. He ran to his car. The engine would not start. He heard breathing from the back seat. He did not turn around. He started running. The streets tangled together. Every corner led to the same place. When he reached the gas station, the old man was waiting for him. He no longer looked old. His face was younger, but his eyes were even emptier. Everyone who came here had lost their way, he said. Greyhollow found the lost. It kept them, because the town was hungry. Ethan ran into the forest. Branches scratched his face. His feet stumbled, but he did not stop. Suddenly, he felt asphalt beneath him. The fog lifted. The sun was rising. He was on the main road. Everything seemed normal again. When he turned around, there was no forest, no town. Months passed. Ethan told no one about what had happened, but his sleep was restless. In his dreams, he saw the same road and the same sign, Greyhollow. In every dream, the town grew more crowded. People stared at him. They called to him. One night, there was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found a small package on the ground. Inside was an old key and a note. The fuel is ready. As Ethan held the key, the room began to fill with fog. The walls pulled away, the ground trembled, and in that moment, he understood. Greyhollow had never allowed him to leave. It had only stretched the road. The next morning, an abandoned car was found on the highway. Its doors were open. No one was inside.
It had entered a road that did not appear on any map, and somewhere far away, in a place no one could find, Greyhollow had gained one more soul.
Next up is Michael Carter's story. Enjoy the story. Long-haul driving had taught Michael Carter one simple rule. Most nights passed without meaning, miles of asphalt silence and headlights blending into a single numb routine. That night felt no different when he set out. Still, a faint tension lingered in his chest, as if the road ahead was already aware of him. Michael Carter thought it would be one of the most ordinary nights of his life when he began the journey. The road stretching from Arizona to Utah was nothing new to him. As a driver with years of experience, he was used to the darkness of night, foggy roads, and silence. Yet this time there was an unease he could not explain. It felt as if something had tried to stop him before he left. Even the engine, hesitating before starting, seemed to confirm it. As the night deepened, the road began to feel strange. The route that should have been a straight line on the map started to curve. Roadside signs grew sparse, then vanished entirely. The radio crackled and went silent. There was no signal on his phone. Michael tried to remind himself that this was a rural area, but the explanation did nothing to calm him. Without realizing it, he slowed down. Trees rose on both sides of the road. There should not have been a forest here. The reach of the headlights narrowed, and fog slowly settled in. This was not ordinary fog. It did not stay still. It twisted and crawled along the road. Michael cracked the window slightly and caught the smell: damp earth, rust, and old metal. As the fog thickened, a sign appeared. Its wooden posts were rotting, and the lettering was faded but readable: Greyhollow. Michael hit the brakes. The name filled him with fear for no clear reason. When he considered turning back, he realized the road behind him had completely vanished into the fog. It was as if nothing existed there anymore. As he entered the town, he felt time slow down. The streets were neat and the houses well kept, but something was wrong. Everything was too still. There was no wind, no sound. When he stepped out of the car, the echo of his own footsteps startled him. The town was so empty it could not swallow sound. He looked at the fuel gauge. It was in the red. He noticed a light in the distance, a gas station, just like in the stories before. The presence of light was strange but hopeful. Inside, he saw the old man, the same one, sitting on a chair, hands resting on his knees. His face was deeply wrinkled, and his eyes looked almost like glass. Michael asked about fuel. The old man lifted his head and studied him. His gaze lingered too long on Michael's face. Then he spoke slowly. "The pumps are not working. They will come to fix them in the morning." Michael felt as if he had heard this sentence before, but could not remember where. When he said he was nearly out of fuel, the old man pointed toward the motel. "At the end of town, near the forest. You need to stay there tonight." Michael looked outside. The fog had grown thicker. The road was gone. He accepted without protest. This was not a choice. When he reached the motel, the air felt heavy. The door creaked open. Inside was surprisingly clean, but the cleanliness was unsettling. It did not feel human. The room was already assigned to him. The key was old and cold. When he closed the door, all outside sounds stopped instantly. As he examined the room, he noticed the paintings on the walls: Greyhollow's streets, the forest road, and the town sign. But this time, the paintings were different. When he stepped closer, he saw subtle movement. Branches swayed, fog drifted, and inside the paintings there were people. At first faint, then clearer. All of them were facing the same direction, him. The night did not progress. The clock was fixed at 03:17.
Michael tried to sleep, but when he closed his eyes, the sounds began. First tapping, then whispers. They came from inside the walls. When the words became clear, his chest tightened. Hear us, see us, stay here. In the bathroom, the mirror had fogged up. The mist shaped itself. This time, it was not a single word, it was a sentence. You thought you found the road. Michael stepped back. When he touched the mirror, the surface rippled like water. The knocking at the door began. This time, it was not slow. It was urgent, impatient. The handle shook. Michael decided to leave the room. When he stepped into the corridor, the motel had changed. The hallway was longer. There were more doors. From beneath some of them, a dark liquid seeped out. It was not blood. It was thicker, heavier. One door flew open. Inside was not a room, but a street. Greyhollow's main road. People stood there. They had no faces, only dark voids where faces should be. All of them turned toward Michael at once. He ran. Down the stairs, he found himself outside again. The town had completely changed. People stood in the windows of the houses. They did not move. They did not blink. They only watched. He ran toward the gas station. The old man was still there. But now, behind the station, stood something else, a massive, dark structure, as if the rest of the town had been built around it. Michael shouted at the old man and asked what this place was. The old man slowly stood up. He looked taller now. His shadow stretched unnaturally across the ground. Greyhollow, the old man said, is the end of lost roads. Those who came here were running from something. The town hid them, but it took its payment. Michael understood then. The town was not a place, it was a being. It was hungry. It fed on memories, fears, regrets. The gas station was a gate, the motel was a trap, and the old man was the town's voice. Michael tried to run one last time. He fled into the forest. The trees moved. Branches blocked his path. The ground softened beneath his feet and began to pull him in. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed. Suddenly, he felt asphalt. The fog lifted. Morning had come. He was on the main road. Everything was normal. The car worked. Greyhollow was gone. Months passed. Michael believed he had escaped, until one night he dreamed of the gas station. The old man was looking at him. This time, he was smiling. When he woke, there was a faint mist in his room. His phone lit up with a notification. The Maps application was open. A new route had been created. Greyhollow. And in that moment, Michael understood. The town never truly let anyone go. It only allowed them to believe they had escaped, and it would return to claim them.